I fell in love with a man who put me in this wheelchair, only to find out he was hired to make sure I never walked again. Hi, I'm Chloe. The man who put me in this wheelchair is also the first man I ever really loved. And yeah, I know exactly how that sounds. Let me back up. There was a crash at an intersection I'd driven through 1,000 times. The kind of ordinary Tuesday you don't remember until it's the last normal thing that ever happens to you. 1 second, I was stopped at a red light, and the next, there was just steel and glass, and nothing. I woke up in a hospital room I didn't recognize, my legs refusing to answer, no matter how hard I told them to move. The room felt like a cage, white walls, the hum of machines, a window that only ever showed me a parking lot. And every single day, Leo was there. 28, quiet, careful, sitting in that same stiff chair, holding my hand like it was the only thing keeping either of us on the ground. He told me he was sorry, over and over, said he couldn't live with what he'd done to me that night. I looked into his eyes, and I didn't see a monster. I saw a man falling apart. And somewhere in those long, sterile months, I let myself see something else too. A future. There was this one afternoon he showed up with a paper bag of caramels, said his grandmother swore they fixed everything, and for the first time since the accident, I actually laughed. I remember thinking, this can't be the same guy who wrecked my car. He was too gentle for that, too careful with me, like I might break twice. But there was a moment, just one, when I asked him what he remembered about that night, and something in his face closed like a door. He changed the subject so fast I almost missed it, started talking about the weather, of all things. I didn't think much of it then. I think about it now. Weeks turned into months, and by the time I was strong enough to leave the hospital, Leo hadn't left my side once. It felt like fate, like something good could actually grow out of something that broken. One night, I was finally comfortable enough to be at his place, and he stepped into the shower while his phone sat buzzing on the counter. I only picked it up to check the time. I swear, that's all I meant to do. But there was a message on the screen, a file, not a text, just a small preview waiting to be opened. I tapped it without thinking twice. It was a contract. My name sat right there on the top line, and beside it, a number that made the floor tilt under me. I couldn't breathe. My thumb hovered over the screen, wanting to scroll further, needing to see who sent it. But the shower shut off down the hall, and I nearly dropped the phone. I put it back exactly where I found it, and stood there listening to the pipes tick as the water drained, like nothing in the world had just changed. When he came out, I smiled. I laughed at some dumb joke about the takeout menus on his counter. Inside, I was screaming 100 questions at once. Why would there be a contract with my name on it? Why would he have it sitting on his phone like it was nothing? I let him kiss my forehead before I left, and the whole drive home, my hands wouldn't stop shaking on the wheel. Every gentle thing he'd ever said to me was suddenly a question mark. The next morning, I waited until he left for work, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator with almost every dollar I had left because I needed to know why anyone on this earth would pay a man to end my life. Those 2 days waiting for the folder were the longest of my life. I kept my phone face down at dinner with Leo, kept smiling, kept pretending my whole world hadn't cracked open. 2 days later, I got the folder. I sat in my car in an empty parking lot with my hands trembling, and the truth was worse than anything I could have imagined. Leo had been hired, paid in full, to make sure I never walked away from that intersection. But here's the thing. He didn't finish the job. The contract ran through a shell company, some name so generic it meant nothing, but the bank records didn't lie. They led straight back to one person. My mother. She wanted the estate. She wanted everything that was supposed to be mine, and I was the only thing standing in her way. I sat there gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white, thinking about every birthday card, every phone call asking if I was eating enough, Every single time I'd mistaken her control for love.
This illustrates gaslighting and narcissistic manipulation. By conflating affection with control, the manipulator creates an emotional dependency that blinds the target to the reality of the abuse.
All of it had been a performance. I thought that was the worst part of the folder. I was wrong. On the very last page, there was something else. An email between Leo and an unknown contact, dated the exact night of the crash. I read it twice because I couldn't believe it. Target is secure, refusing to complete. Keep the money. Wait! What? He hadn't failed the job. He'd refused it on purpose and then stayed close to me for 6 months, not out of guilt, but to make sure my mother never got a second try. I stared at his photo taped inside that folder. The same man who'd brought me flowers every day, who held my hand through every terrifying appointment, and none of it made sense, and all of it made perfect sense at the same time. He wasn't my attacker. He was my bodyguard. He'd walked into my life to end it and stayed to make sure nothing ever could. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from my mother, asking if I was still coming to dinner tonight, with a little heart at the end, like she'd sent 100 times before. My hands were steady when I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it." I wasn't going to sit on this for one more day, not with her sitting across from me, smiling like nothing had ever happened. My mother sat at the head of the table, asking sweetly how my recovery was going, whether I was finally getting used to the chair. Leo sat right beside me, calm, with no idea I knew everything now. I let her talk. I let her smile. I let her think she still had this. Then I set my phone down, screen up, and hit play. My own voice filled the room, laying out every detail, every name, every dollar amount, straight from the investigator's report. The clinking of silverware stopped dead. Nobody moved. Even the candles on the table seemed to hold still. My mother's face didn't show guilt. It showed rage, cold and immediate, the look of someone who'd just watched her own trap close around her instead. "Turn that off," she said, and her voice had nothing sweet left in it. I didn't move. "You should have finished it," I said. "Then we wouldn't be here." "Chloe, honey, I don't know what you think you heard." "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare." Leo turned to me, pale. "Chloe, I need you to know I was never going to let her." "I know," I cut him off, my throat tight. "I know what you didn't do. That's not the conversation we're having right now." I put my hands on the wheels of my chair and pushed back from that table. I had the evidence. I had the truth. And for the first time since that intersection, I had the power. I left that house and didn't look back. I sat with all of it for a long time after that night, the betrayal and the strange, complicated rescue tangled up inside it. Here's what I finally understood. Love isn't about somebody saving you. It's about choosing, over and over, to be better than the people who try to control you, even when they wear a familiar face, even when one of them raised you. I didn't need Leo to explain himself. Not that night anyway. I didn't need my mother's smile across a table ever again. I'd already survived the worst thing either of them could do to me, and I rolled out of that house on my own, engine running before I even had my seatbelt on, carrying my own truth instead of theirs. I was finally free. What happens with Leo next, I honestly don't know yet. But for the first time in longer than I can remember, that's a question I get to answer on my own terms, in my own time, and nobody else's.
Could you ever forgive someone who was hired to hurt you? Let me know your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.